Hello and welcome to the HR Kyle podcast, the ultimate resource for HR insights and guidance that will empower both seasoned business professionals and eager job seekers. I'm HR Kyle, your host. I'm excited to embark on this journey with you. In each episode, we'll delve into the intricacies of HR management, uncovering strategies that can transform the way you approach talent acquisition, employee engagement, and workplace dynamics. Whether you're a seasoned HR pro navigating the ever-evolving landscape of human resources or a job seeker striving to land your dream position, this podcast is your compass. Our mission is simple: to provide you with actionable knowledge, expert interviews, and inspiring stories that will help you thrive in the world of HR. So, sit back, relax, and get ready to take your HR game to the next level. Welcome to the HR Kyle podcast, where HR meets success. Welcome, dear listeners, to the HR Kyle podcast. I'm your host, HR Kyle. We have another informative episode for you today. In today's episode, we dive into a crucial topic in segment 1, managing unsatisfactory performance. This marks the beginning of a two-part series where we explore effective strategies and insights. Whether you're a current supervisor or you're aspiring to be one, you'll want to take notes during that discussion. Later in segment 2, we have an exciting guest sharing her career journey and valuable lessons from the world of career services. She's got a great story to tell, and there'll be something for anyone looking for a new role either now or in the future. But before we delve into that, let's take a short break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on the HR Kyle podcast. Are you a business owner looking to build a thriving team? Or perhaps a job seeker on a quest for your dream career? Look no further than HR Kyle. HR Kyle is your trusted partner for all things human resources. We're not just about services, we're about success. For businesses, HR Kyle offers tailored HR solutions from talent acquisition to compliance support. We're here to help your team flourish. And for the job seekers, HR Kyle provides personalized career guidance and direction that only a seasoned HR professional can offer. We'll help you find that perfect job match. Don't settle for less. Choose HR Kyle and unlock success today. Visit us at www.hrkyle.com. HR Kyle, unlocking potential, empowering careers, transforming business. Welcome back, HR Kyle podcast listeners. We're about to jump into the heart of today's episode. In segment 1, we'll be tackling the important topic of managing unsatisfactory performance. Now, this is the first part of a two-part series. Let's dive into effective strategies and insights to navigate this crucial aspect of HR. Get ready for some valuable takeaways. But before we get into it, I always say, I'll give you a moment to grab something to take notes with, because again, this episode, along with the one that will follow next week, you're going to want to take notes on the best way to manage unsatisfactory performance. So, I always like to kick off this discussion with what we're not calling this segment and the reason why we don't call it any other name. So, notice I don't call it managing difficult employees. Why? Because it's about the performance, not the person. And I just want to stop there just for a moment. Performance is about the things the person does relative to their job. It's not about the person. Okay? We don't call it dealing with difficult employees because this implies being difficult is okay. It also implies that performance isn't as important, and that's simply not true on both accounts. Being difficult is not okay, and it shouldn't be the norm. Secondly, to follow up with the point I made with the first title that I dismissed, this is about performance. Okay, another title we don't use, getting employees to do better. That's just too vague and doesn't address performance. Now, you're seeing a theme here, right? I keep talking about performance. I keep coming back to that. That's what we're looking to improve. Here's another one. How to get through the day, fill in the blank, whatever you want to say after that. What does this do? It enables poor performance to continue. So it doesn't even address the poor performance at all. It's just saying, hey, supervisor, here's the ways to get through the day without being aggravated, for example. Here's another title we don't use: putting up with difficult employees. Because again, this implies that being difficult is okay, and it's not. Here's another one, and I've seen this used: appeasing difficult employees. Please don't do that if you're a leader. The outcomes of that are never positive. This encourages the same performance from them. Guess what else it does? It encourages it for everyone else. Ignoring poor performance. Again, tempting as a leader. Well, I should say supervisor, because if you're a leader, you're not ignoring poor performance. This never works, because you know what doesn't happen? The performance doesn't just magically improve. Here's another one. I've seen this, guys. Don't do this. Acting like the employee's doing well. You and everyone around them knows they're a poor performer. But if we just act like they're a good performer, that makes it go away. No, that encourages the same poor performance from them and everyone else. Here's another one I've seen in practice. Doesn't work. Not giving employee work because they're a poor performer. So in other words, you're rewarding them and you're punishing the rest of the team. Here's another one. Seen it in practice. Tiptoeing around the employee. So in other words, you're encouraging that same performance in them, et cetera, et cetera. You see where I'm going with it. Please don't tiptoe around them. They're difficult, so I don't want to deal with that. No, you've got to. That's why you're in a leadership role. And finally, letting employee do what they want. We didn't choose that title for this either, because it rewards them and it punishes everyone else. Those are the titles that we purposely didn't choose for this discussion, and I've given you the reasons why we didn't, because none of them work. They also have an adverse effect on the rest of the team. So let's talk a little bit further about that. So here's the impact of unsatisfactory performance. And of course, I did my research in advance. So if you want to do some research of your own, you certainly can, but I've saved you the time and effort. Here's what we learned from a study from Eagle Hill Consulting. And the title of the study was, Are Low Performers Destroying Your Culture and Driving Away Your Best Employees? And that's a question mark. Short answer, yes. Yes to both. So impact one that they talk about in the study is lower workplace morale. 68% of respondents said one poor performer, it's allowed to continue, that's having a devastating effect on your workplace morale. Okay, it creates an increased work burden for other employees, especially high performers, because that's who ends up picking up the slack. More time is devoted to the low performers than others. It's uncanny. Your top performers get no attention because your low performers are taking up all of your attention. And it's not moving others or the organization forward. How could it? You're focused on low performance. You're not going to get ahead by focusing your attention on that. The number two impact that the study found, it stifles innovation. 54% of respondents said tolerating low performance stifles innovation amongst teams and amongst organizations. Why? Because it contributes to a lack of initiative and a lack of innovation. Naturally, it would. Why else? Because replacing low performers leads to increase in new ideas and approaches. Imagine that. You replace these low performers with people that are average and above, and those people come up with more ideas, new ideas, different approaches. Here's the other thing the study found. Not addressing low performers leads to higher turnover, which leads to less likelihood of low performance being addressed. Why? Because you're spending all of your time replacing the people that leave. And in these scenarios, guess who is more likely to leave and guess who is likely more able to leave? Your top performers, because other companies recognize them as top performers. So that's who they're going to steal. Guess who is to blame for poor performance occurring? Notice I hesitated. You as supervisor. Let me repeat that again. Guess who is blamed for poor performance occurring? You, the supervisor, because you're allowing it. And you're allowing all the other things that go along with that. So it's time to step up and do your part. So let's talk about step one in this process. You have to define what satisfactory performance looks like. Let me give you some ideas about this. Job duty performance. Those individuals who are performing their job duties at a high level, that's what satisfactory and above performance looks like. Timeliness of work. So people getting their work done on time according to expectations. Work quality. Again, that's measuring satisfactory performance. Higher quality work, more satisfactory. Attendance, punctuality, and availability. I always say one of the best abilities is availability. Collaboration. How well does that individual work with others? I don't know of any job or any function that doesn't need to work with others. So collaboration is definitely a performance measure. Communication. And this is in all forms, whether it's formal, informal, email, verbal, nonverbal, all of these things. Communication is a measure of performance. Impact and influence on coworkers in the company. You can determine someone's performance level based upon that measure. Low performers do not have an impact on the company except negative. They do not have an influence on coworkers other than negative. So please keep that in mind. Growth, development, and proficiency. Again, your top performers, you're going to watch them grow, you're going to watch them develop, and you're going to watch them gain more proficiency. Low performers, just the opposite. So that's a measure of performance, growth, development, proficiency. And then finally, accepts and learns from feedback. Top performers are good at that. Low performers are not. That is a measure of performance level. So now we've defined what satisfactory performance looks like. The next question I have for you, and this is critical. So let's take some time to let these points sink in. Does the employee know the expectations? And before you quickly answer yes, let's go through this list that I have in front of me, and you decide after going through this list if that employee does know. 1, you've sat down and reviewed their job description with them, and they've signed acknowledging that you've reviewed it and that they have a copy of it. Number 2, you've gone over expectations with them for things such as attendance and arrival time, collaboration, what their interactions should look like. Number 3, when you're providing them work, have you given them deadlines and have you described to them what the expectations are for that work to be completed? Number 4, when the work is submitted to you, are you providing them feedback? And I'm looking for 2 types of feedback, and we talked about this in a previous episode. One is confirming, so you're going through their work and you're telling them the things that they've done well, the things that have met your expectations that you spelled out in advance. You're also providing them, where relevant, corrective feedback, what they used to call negative feedback, and it's not negative. If it's leading to positive results, then it's not negative, it's corrective. So those are the areas of the work that did not meet your expectations. And again, the expectations that they were aware of when the work was provided. Also, are you speaking to and are you reviewing the quality of the work? And depending on the job, each task, each responsibility has a different measure relative to quality. But again, are you reviewing that with them to enhance that message? And then here's one of the biggest ones that we need to focus on as leaders. That individual is mirroring, in a lot of cases, your behaviors, your actions. So are you doing the things as a leader that you expect of them? Are other team members doing the type of things that are expected of the team? If your answer is anything other than a yes to these, if there's any no's in here, you're falling short. In fact, if there's any sort of a no or not sure to any of those questions I just posed, then I would have to ask you, does the employee really know their expectations? And the short answer is no, they do not. So again, step 2, Does the employee know the expectations? And the only way you can affirmatively answer that question is by going through those. Do they have a job description? Do they understand it? Did you talk to them about the expectations? Did you follow that talk up with a email, something in writing? When you're providing them work, are you sharing with them what the expectations are? When they're providing the work back to you completed, are you reviewing that with them? Are you confirming and are you correcting where necessary? You should always be confirming. You correct when necessary. And then finally, are you walking the walk? It's very easy to talk the talk, but are you walking the walk? When you can answer yes to all of those questions, then you're ready to sit down with the employee and address performance issues. Until you can answer yes, you are not ready to do that. That's why we're breaking this up into two segments. Today we've talked about these points. Next week, when we talk about this subject again, we'll get more into the performance expectation meeting. And I will explain the details around that, give you some idea of the logistics and so on. The point of today was to prepare you to make sure that you're ready for that meeting. So that's what we covered there. And that concludes segment 1 on managing unsatisfactory performance. We've covered some essential strategies, but stay tuned because as I mentioned, there's more to come in the second part of our series, which will take place next week. Next episode, we're going to get into the meeting that needs to take place with the employee. For now, though, let's take a breather, grab a cup of coffee, and join us right after the break for segment 2. This is where we'll have a guest sharing her insights about her inspiring career in career services. So stay tuned with us for more HR Kyle podcast.
Are you a business owner looking to build a thriving team? Or perhaps a job seeker on a quest for your dream career? Look no further than HR Kyle. HR Kyle is your trusted partner for all things human resources. We're not just about services, we're about success. For businesses, HR Kyle offers tailored HR solutions from talent acquisition to compliance support. We're here to help your team flourish. And for the job seekers, HR Kyle provides personalized career guidance and direction that only a seasoned HR professional can offer. We'll help you find that perfect job match. Don't settle for less. Choose HR Kyle and unlock success today. Visit us at www.hrkyle.com. HR Kyle, unlocking potential, empowering careers, transforming business.
Welcome back, HR Kyle podcast listeners. This is what I always say is my favorite part of the show, and today's really no different. In segment 2, we have a fantastic guest joining us today. Please welcome Erin, a dedicated professional from a major university's career services center. Erin will be sharing her career journey and offering valuable lessons for everyone tuning in. Erin, welcome to the HR Kyle podcast.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm so excited to be here tonight with you and the listeners as well. Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. We've been looking forward to this all week, so glad you could join us tonight. Erin, let's start off with our typical first question, and this episode will be no different. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Amazing. So this is actually one of my favorite questions because I am an assistant director of career services. This is my personal elevator pitch. And so I get to give you that tonight, which is great. So like I said, I'm an assistant director of career services and a career services advisor. I've actually been in this role for almost 5 years, and I love my job because no day is exactly the same between working with students, alumni, employers, faculty in the colleges we work in, and colleagues as well. I've always really enjoyed meeting new people and then also learning a lot about them. So that keeps my job pretty exciting for me. Professionally, I really enjoy helping other people create paths for their futures, whether that's through my career advising or helping them career plan for whatever it is that they might be searching to do next. Personally, I'm an Akron native and I grew up in Firestone Park. My fiance and I actually have 2 cats that we adopted recently. And in my free time, I enjoy being in nature, spending time with new and old friends, and then also creating digital art on my iPad and on Canva.
Wonderful. Aaron, thank you so much for sharing a little bit about yourself and letting us inside your world a little bit to get to know you better. And I have to admit, I'm partial to cats as well. I've got a couple of them here around. Sometimes they do step into the episodes. We'll see what happens tonight, but we're definitely fans of cats here on the HR Kyle
Good
podcast.
to know because I have two kittens and my fiance is actually keeping them locked and loaded in another part of the house so that they don't make an appearance.
Well, if they happen to, we'll count for that.
Awesome. I love it.
So, Aaron, you gave us a little peek into your career and what you're doing now, but your career to this point has really been about helping students explore their career interests. Where does that interest come from for you? Where did you draw that from?
Yeah, and thank you for asking that, Kyle. I feel like as a career services advisor, we don't get to answer a lot of these questions. And so thank you for asking. I feel like for me, I've always really been naturally curious about other people. And so when I was a kid, I was always the kid asking why. And I always wanted to understand how things worked, what makes people tick. I was also the person who had about 100 different interests growing up. I drove my parents absolutely insane. I did theater growing up and I love the stage. I love making people laugh. I loved watching weather reports growing up as well on Fox 8, Dick Goddard. And I really thought I wanted to be a meteorologist. And then at one point, my grandpa was an editor of a local newspaper, and he also loved photography. And so I spent a lot of time with him growing up, and those were two hobbies that I had growing up was writing and then photography. I also love museums and history and thought at one point I wanted to study archaeology or become a museum curator. But after kind of taking time to explore these interests, I really discovered that some of these were probably better hobbies for me than careers. But I think that also gave me an appreciation for people who are versatile in their career journeys. I've always been a strong believer in the fact that you don't need to give one answer when people ask what you want to be when you grow up. My answer changed constantly growing up, and there were a lot of times through high school and college that I felt pretty uncertain myself. And so I think it's easy to help someone explore who has a general idea of what they like. But for someone who has a lot of interests, I think it's a little bit more of a challenge sometimes. And I actually really like that about career advising because I was someone who had a lot of interests and wasn't sure about my own path as well. And it wasn't until I started to embrace my own uncertainty that I started to learn who I truly am, not as a professional, but really just as a human being.
Aaron, I really appreciate the insight you shared there because I think one of the things that makes you successful in your role, having worked with you now for, believe it or not, coming up on a couple of years,
No.
is that healthy curiosity that you bring to your role. And I think you foster that in the students that you work with and you give them permission. And this is going to sound funny initially, but I'm going to elaborate. You give them permission to be a bit uncertain. And here's what I mean by that. So often students coming out of high school, they're expected to have that firm answer to that question. What do you want to do for the rest of your life? And if they don't have an answer by 18, there's this feeling that, wow, they're failing. They're not going to have a fulfilling life. But what we know, having worked with individuals and job seeking and worked with professionals throughout their career is so many professionals, their careers take twists and turns and they're not always certain at any point in time what they want to do next. So one of the things that I think you've been very effective at is doing what exactly you've described. You've given your students the okay, the permission to be unsure and to feel comfortable exploring those interests.
Yeah, Kyle, and I appreciate you saying that too, because so often we have first year students come into our office and they are just heartbroken when they find out that maybe the major that they picked wasn't for them. And it's okay. You don't have to have your life scripted out for you at age 18 or 19 or, even 28 like I am. So you can keep exploring and know that your journey is going to be relevant and it's going to be worthwhile and it's a journey worth sharing no matter what kind of twists and turns your path take.
Yeah, those are wonderful lessons. And you're very right on that. It doesn't matter if you're 19, 28, 39,
Yep.
59. You can always make those changes. You can change your mind on what you enjoy doing. And I think another great point that you worked through personally was you decided these are the things that I want to do and that I can do well as a career, but that doesn't also mean that I can't do these other things as a hobby or a side interest.
Yep, absolutely. I learned this from one of my mentors in my master's program, who's just an awesome mentor to me still, but really talking about how a career isn't just your job. It's all your life roles. In my career, I've been a daughter, I've been a friend, I've been a colleague, a coworker, I've been an artist, I've been an actor, I've been a singer, I've been a career advisor, and those aren't even all the life roles that I'll have in my life, but they're part of my career as a person. And so I really want my students to understand that your career is so much more than just what you do from 8 to 5 or whatever your working hours are. It's about who you are personally as a human being too.
Wonderful advice. And in my world, we talk so much about work-life balance, but honestly, I find those employees that come to that realization that you've described, they have a much healthier work-life balance because they realize that one, they can't walk in the work door and leave all their home troubles behind. And by the same token, they don't leave work at whatever time and leave their work troubles behind. Their being is this combination of all the things you described. And I think when we come to that realization from a healthy sense, it makes us more satisfied and more healthy in our overall lives.
Agreed.
Aaron, you mentioned in your LinkedIn profile about quote unquote helping students and alumni gain confidence in their skill set. What does that mean to you, and why do you feel drawn to that?
You did your research, Kyle. You looked on my LinkedIn before this. I love that. That's always what I coach my own students to do. For me, when I say that, I think about the fact that I'm a really big believer in the idea that you really have to learn how to be your own champion. Of course, there are always going to be people in your corner who really want to support you. They want to build you up. And that's especially the case when you're a student or you're new to a role or an industry, but that might not always be the case as you move further into your career or into your life. There's always going to be people in your corner, but sometimes they might be a little bit harder to find. And I have a lot of students who come into my office and they don't always know how to market their experiences as transferable to their professional interests. And what I kind of mean by that is I have a lot of students who quote unquote just on themselves. They say, Aaron, well, I just work as a server, or I'm just a cashier, or I'm just a camp counselor. And they don't really understand how those part-time experiences are developing them, not just as a professional, but, personally too, and interest-wise. And when I have a student in front of me saying that, I stop them and I say, don't just on yourself. Experiences really do help to shape us and our skill sets, but we're also going to be more than the titles of our experiences. And I want to make sure that any student or alumni or just person that I meet with for a job search appointment understands that they're capable of rewriting their narrative to become who they want to be despite what their past experiences have been.
Aaron, that's wonderful advice. And I know in your work, of course, you pass that on to students and alumni, but I find those same lessons to hold very true for those individuals who are looking to go through a career transition. And I know I've got a few of those listening right now because those are some people that I'm working with to find new roles where they've been, for example, a teacher and they
Sure.
want to get into learning and development or training. So hearing you describe that there, I think that, of course, is a great lesson to your customers that you currently serve. But I hope my listeners are out there hearing you say this as well for those who are looking to career transition.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I think that's one of my favorite lessons to share with students too, because so long ago, and maybe not so long ago too, but when I was in school, I was that person who sat in my career counselor's office and I said, I'm just a server, or, I'm just a business management major. I picked my major because I really liked the skills that I could get out of it, but I didn't really tangibly see what I could do with it quite yet. And they're actually the ones that taught me not to just on myself. And if there's anything I could ever pass along to someone, it would be to value yourself, not just for what you want to be, but who you are right now.
Again, fantastic advice, and thank you for sharing that. Now, Aaron, you've worked with a lot of students. What's one thing that you have drawn from their experience that influences your work?
I love this question because I feel like working with my students and alumni is a very oftentimes humbling experience. They're so intelligent and so impressive, and I feel like I learn from my students all the time, and I don't think they realize it, which is amazing, but they teach me every day. One thing that makes me really excited about working with the students I have who are applying to internships and early career opportunities, and sometimes even the alumni who will come back after 20 to 30 years, is that they're so eager to learn. And throughout my almost 5 years in this role, I feel like I'm reminded daily that learning shouldn't stop after you graduate from a program or finish any sort of specialized training program that you're going through. But I really think we should embrace learning at every point of our personal lives, of our professional lives, and not be so rigid in the way that we function day to day, whether that's personally or professionally at work. I think that being set in our ways can sometimes hold us back from evolving into the new and improved versions of ourselves. And so if my students have taught me anything, it's that I should be a lifelong learner, not just in the classroom, but just from my environments that I put myself in.
Aaron, amen to all of that. And we've talked about that in prior episodes. We've talked with other guests precisely about what you were saying. There's no expiration date on growth, development, learning, and just pushing yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And that's something too that even, 10 years ago when I was a student, I was coached to ask for feedback. And I feel like it's something as a student, like you ask for feedback to get better and like learn, but like it's become a real habit for me. And I wanted to become a habit for my students and the listeners out there too, is that you need to keep asking for feedback, because even if you're not sitting in a classroom learning, you're going to learn by asking for feedback from people around you too, people who really take the time to observe you and want to help you. I think being receptive to feedback is just so important, because that really is how you learn as an adult. If you're not taking those classes or doing any type of formal training, feedback's so important to your own development.
So very true. I always say it's the closest thing to having a mirror, right?
I love that. I'm going to start using that, Kyle.
Well, I didn't get time to trademark it, so you're free to use it at no cost at this point. Last question. What's one piece of advice that you would pass on to someone still trying to find their place in the world of work?
That's a great question. I would say my one piece of advice is not just to, and I say this to my students sometimes too, but not just to dream with boldness, not dream, but act in boldness. I think that your words really do have power. I remember saying to myself when I was a sophomore in college after I did a little bit of exploration, like, wow, I love working on a college campus. I love my student employment job on campus. I think that I really want to work at a university. I'm going to do what I can to do it. And those words had a lot of power because I believed myself when I said it. But I think it's the action that I took afterwards that really helped me to start acting with purpose and acting in intention and saying, not just saying this is something that I'm going to do, but actually putting action to it and actually doing it. I think that acting with that intention and purpose is what is really to move you forward. I'm a huge fan of experiential learning, obviously. Working as a career services advisor, I love it when my students learn through their experiences. I also feel like if you have a career interest and you've considered it and read up on it, that's great. But I think the most memorable and impactful nuggets of knowledge that you can get come from moments where we actually experience rather than only read about. And so taking action, and I always tell my students, join a professional group that you're interested in, who have similar interests to you. Reach out to people with your dream job. Ask them to meet up for coffee or chat over Teams or Zoom for 20 minutes. Volunteer your time with an organization that has the same values as you do. Complete contract work, because there's tons of that out there right now. People need the help of people who want to learn and do to build your skill set up. And of course, while you want to be strategic in how you position yourself to a recruiter, don't just go into every experience thinking that it's a chance to build your resume. It's also a chance to build skills far past just what you can use them for in a job. Our experiences professionally have just as much to do with how we develop personally too. And one thing I want my students to know is that I want them to like themselves personally before they like themselves professionally. because liking yourself personally is just the root of it all.
Well, and Aaron, that's a good way to wrap up this segment in this interview because it really touches on something you mentioned at the beginning, and that is getting to know yourself. And I know you would say that in order to like yourself, you have to know yourself. So I think that's a great way to wrap up this segment. And folks, there you have it. That's the conclusion of segment 2 on the HR Kyle podcast. I want to send out a very special thanks to Erin for taking the time to share her story along with the valuable lessons she's learned in her work. So Erin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyle, and thank you, listeners, too. This has been so much fun. This has been a bucket list item for me to be on a podcast, so thank you.
No, you're very welcome. I'm only going to have one dilemma, though, after everyone hears this, because they're going to want to have you back on. So we might have to talk about that at some point.
I love it.
So just
Thank
know
you.
that. You're very welcome. Well, listeners, I also want to thank you for tuning in today. You're the reason we do this, and your support means the world to me. Be sure that you're connecting with us and following the show. But until next time, stay motivated, stay inspired, and stay tuned. This is the HR Kyle podcast signing off. Take care.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of the HR Kyle podcast. We hope you found our discussion valuable and filled with insights that you can apply in your professional journey. Whether you're a business leader aiming to foster a thriving workplace or a job seeker looking to carve out your own path, remember that HR Kyle is the compass that can guide you towards success. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share it with your network. We're committed to being your trusted source for HR wisdom, and we look forward to having you back with us for our next episode. Remember, in the world of HR and professional growth, there's always room for progress. Be sure to visit our website at hrkyle.com. That's hrkyle.com to learn more about how we can help you meet your business and professional goals. So until next time, this is HR Kyle signing off. Stay motivated, stay informed, and keep reaching for those career goals. Music provided by bensound.com. That's bensound.com.